All right, so two angles are supplementary. Their sum is 180 degrees. And the larger angle below measures 12 degrees less than 3 times the smaller angle. Now, I'm not going to do this one, do one similar to it. But they're telling you to let x be the measure of the smaller angle. And so the question is, what's the measure of each angle? Okay? All right, so let's suppose that in our problem, and I'm making this up, so it may not come out very nice. All right, so suppose that two angles are supplementary. Remember, supplementary means that when you add them up, what's their sum? 180. It was complementary. What would their sum be? 90. Okay, so always Google. Complementary angles are two angles that add up to be 90. All right, supplementary is 180. Okay, so the larger angle is in, let's say it's 15 degrees. So remember the symbol for degrees is that small circle raised. It's like a superscript. 15 degrees less than twice the smaller angle. And the question is, what's the measure of each angle? So find the measure of each angle. Okay, so, and they could be separate angles. They don't have to be connected, but the one on your diagram is connected. So you have these two angles, and these two angles when add together adds up to be 180. And so you're told that the larger angle, so obviously this one looks larger, so we'll call this a larger one. The larger angle is 15 degrees less than twice the smaller angle. So I'm going to let the smaller angle be x. So this will be x right here. So in terms of representing your unknowns, you have two angles, smaller and larger. All right, so what's going to go in this blank right here? X. All right, now based on the information that's in the problem, how are you going to write the expression for the larger angle? 2x what? Just 2x?
Plus 15.
Why plus 15? Why is it 2x plus 15? Yeah, why is it subtracting? Because it says less than, right? So 15 degrees less than, you need to know that that's subtraction. Sum means to add. Less than, if I say you're 20 years less than my age, you're going to subtract, right? You're not going to add. So how would you write this, though? Remember, less than is going to be 15. Now, the order matters. Is it going to be 15 minus 2x or 2x minus 15? 2x minus 15. So you have to remember that phrase. We've talked about less than many times, how to deal with it. Okay, so there's your expression. Then we're going to set up the equation. All right, so this is x and this is 2x minus 15. So how are you going to set this up?
X plus 2x minus 15.
You have to have equations. You better be an equal sign. Equal what? 180. Because you're told they're supplementary. So supplementary means when you add them up, they equal 180. All right, so now you're going to solve. So when you combine like terms, this is going to be 3x minus 15 equal 180. Okay, what's the next step? Add 15 to both sides. Combine like terms. So I get 3x equal 205. Is that right? Nope. 195, right?
I think it's 210.
I'm sorry? 195, right? Okay. And then what do you do to both sides? Okay, so what's x? 195 divided by 3 is what? 65? Okay, so that's what x is. Now you got to go back to what that means. So what does that 65 degrees represent? The smaller angle. That's this right here, right? And so how do I find the larger angle? Wherever you see the variable x, you plug in 65. So that's 2 times 65 minus 15. 2 times 65 is 130. And what's 130 minus 15? 115. And so now you answer the question. All right, remember, you got to use a sentence. So you're going to say the two angles measure, or you can say the smaller angle is 65 degrees and the larger angle is 115 degrees, or you can just say the two angles measure. And what do they measure? No, they don't measure 180. 65 degrees and 115 degrees, right? Okay. All right, so that was that example. Okay, so that's going to take care of worksheet 9.4, part C. Okay, so number 20, it says that the flag of Brazil contains a parallelogram. One angle of the parallelogram is 15 degrees less than twice the measure of the angle next to it. And find the measure of each angle of the parallelogram. Okay, so they remind you about what a parallelogram is, or a property of a parallelogram, and it says, I recall that opposite angles of a parallelogram have the same measure. Okay, so, and also remember that opposite sides have the same measure as well. But in particular, since we're talking about angles, they're reminding you that in a parallelogram, so when you look at a parallelogram, opposite angles are congruent. They have the same measure. So if this is 50 degrees, then this has to be 50 degrees. If this is 100, this has to be 100. Okay? All right. And then it says this. It says that the one angle of a parallelogram, so let's say it's this one right here, one angle of a parallelogram is 15 degrees less than, there's that word less than again, less than twice the measure of the angle next to it. So let's say this is the angle that's next to it. Doesn't matter which one. You can use this one or this one. Does not matter. So what would you let's talk about this one. What would you let this one be right here? How would you represent this one? X. Okay, good. And so this one's X, then that angle we're referring to says it is 15 degrees less than twice the measure of that angle right here. So how would you represent this? Say it again. X minus 15? 2x minus 15. Right? 2x minus 15. Okay. So you use that information and that's what you have. Now, what do you know about this angle right here that I'm pointing to? It's also 2x minus 15 because opposite angles are what? Congruent. They have the same measure. What about this angle here? What's this angle? That's x as well because opposite angles are congruent. Okay, so that's where I'm at. All right. Now, let's set up the equation. What do you remember about the, and you probably forgot this, but what do you remember about the four angles of a quadrilateral or a parallelogram? What do they add up to?
360.
360. So a triangle, they add up to be what measure? 180. A parallelogram is made up of two triangles, right? So 180 plus 180 is how many degrees? 360. So that's where you get that 360 from. All right, so when you set up the equation, you're going to add up all these four angles. So you're going to say x plus 2x minus 15 plus x plus another 2x minus 15, and all that has to equal what? 360. So there's your equation. All right, now let's solve the equation. So combined like terms, I get, what's that, 6x minus 30 equal 360. What's the next step? Add 30 to both sides. And so I get 6x equal 390. Then divide both sides by what? 6. And so x equal, what does x equal? 65? All right, so x equals 65. Okay, now from this diagram where I had all these angles represented, this angle right here is now what? Right here? 65. So if this is 65, this right here has to be what? 65. Then this is going to be, how do I find this angle? Yeah, so you can say 2 times 65 minus 15. So that's 130 minus 15, which is the same numbers we had earlier, wasn't it? Okay. And so this right here is also going to be what? 115. And so you're going to answer the question. And so you're going to say the four angles measure. And what do they measure? It didn't have to be in a certain order. Tell me what they measure. 65, 65, 115, and 115. Just make sure you use the degree symbol. You got to have your units. So don't just say 65. It's really 65 degrees, 115 degrees, and so on. All right, so that was number 20. Okay, let's look at number 40. So number 40, you're told that two angles are complementary if their sum is 90 degrees. And so you're given this diagram, and you're actually told what the angles, the expression for the angles are. That's a 3. So based on that diagram, how would you set up the equation?
X plus 2x minus 3 equals 90.
Okay, so you add up the two angles, so x plus 2x minus 3 has to equal 90, because you're told they're complementary. And so now you're going to solve. So that's 3x minus 3 equal 90. Add 3 to both sides. I get 3x equal 93. Then divide both sides by 3. And so x is 31. All right. So that means that this angle right here is 31 degrees. So how do I find the measure of this angle? Okay, so 2 times 31 minus 3. So that's 62 minus 3, which is 59. And you could have also said this. You could have said 90 minus 31 also gives you what? 59. Okay. And they do it have to be 90. So 31 plus 51 is 90. All right, so the two angles measure 31. The three angles measure 31 degrees and 59 degrees. All right, 44. All right, 44. You have that the sum of 2/3 and 4 times a number is equal to 5/6 subtracted from 5 times the number. And you want to find the number. What's your unknown? Huh?
The number
So you're going to let x equal the number. That's what you're going to say, right? Okay, so you're going to say let x equal the number. Okay, now we're going to set up the equation based on those sentences. Okay, so it says the sum of 2/3 and 4 times a number. How do you represent that?
2/3 plus 4x.
Okay, 2/3 plus 4x, or you could say 4x plus 2/3, is the same as, all right, now 5/6 subtracted from 5 times the number. How do you represent that?
Equals 5/6 subtracted from 5x.
So how do you write this, Dom? Tell me what to write first.
5/6.
Well,
you can put 5x.
5x,
Take away 5/6.
5/6. So it's not 5/6 minus 5x, it's what? 5x minus 5/6. Okay? All right. Now what's the next step? Okay, so what are you going to do next?
Get rid of the fractions. Multiply by the reciprocal.
Well, reciprocal of what?
Lowest common denominator.
Okay, so there are two ways you can do this. You can multiply both sides by the LCD. All right, now on that worksheet that y'all got back, when it said multiply by the LCD, you had to do what? You had to multiply by the LCD. Adding 5/6 to both sides or subtracting 2/3 for both sides was not what the directions said. All right, so you had to use information from that section. So you got to be careful what the direction says. So you'll notice that some of you got points taken away because you didn't follow directions. So there are two ways you could have done this. You could have multiplied both sides by the LCD. What's the LCD? 6. So doing that, you would have had to say this. You'd have to say 6 times 4x plus 2/3 equals, and then 6 times 5x minus 5/6. That's what you had to show me. Now, putting that, what's the next step? Distribute. What's 6 times 4x? 24x. All right, now we got to figure out what 6 times 2/3 is. 6 times 2/3.
4/6.
Okay. 3 and a 3 is 1. 3 and a 6 is 2. So it's really what? 4. So plus 4. Now remember, you shouldn't have a fraction anymore, right? So when you said 4/6, you knew that couldn't be right because the whole purpose of multiplying by the LCD is to clear that denominator. All right, so you get 24x plus 4. Equal, over here when you distribute, what's 6 times 5x? And then what's 6 times 5/6? 5, good. All right, now what's the next step? What do you want to do? Okay, you want to subtract 4 from each side, so you want to bring the constants to the right. Okay, combine like terms. I get 24x equal 30x minus 9. A negative 5 and a negative 4 is a negative 9. Now what's the next step? Subtract 30x from each side. What's 24x minus 30x? Negative 6x. Equal a what? Negative 9. What's the next step? Divide both sides by negative 6. Now some of you have a habit of saying the answer is negative 9 over negative 6. I'm going to keep taking points away because that implies you don't know that a negative divided by negative is supposed to be a what? A positive. You keep doing it, I'll keep taking points. So x equal what? 9/6, or you could say 3 over 2. Okay? But don't say negative over negative. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. All right, so that's number 44. Okay, 48. All right, 48. You have that in June, there were 10 more Republican governors than it was in June 2013. There were 10 more Republican governors than Democratic governors in the United States. How many Democrats and how many Republicans held governor's offices at that point in time? All right. Okay, so you have Republican governors and you have Democratic governors. All right, and based on what setting here, which has more governors, Republicans or Democrats? Republicans, okay, because it says there were 10 more Republican governors, right? So that means that Democratic governors, the amount of Democratic governors is less than the amount of Republican governors. So let's keep that in mind when we set this up. So we have Republican governors, and it's going to be the number of Republican governors, and then the number of Democratic governors. Okay, so it says this now. There were 10 more Republican governors than Democratic governors. All right. Tell me what you want X to represent. Democratic. Okay, so if X represents the number of Democratic governors, then how would you represent the number of Republican governors? X plus 10. Good. Okay. Now, just want to remind you about something. Now, that's what I would have chosen as well. But suppose someone said this. Suppose someone said, well, I'm going to let the number of Republican governors be X. That's fine. How would you represent the number of Democratic governors, though?
X minus 10.
Very good. X minus 10. Because they differ by 10, right?
Yeah.
So X minus 10, that's how you would do it. Now, let's set up the equation. It does not matter which one you use. Most of you would have chosen this one probably. So how would you set up the equation?
X plus
Equal 50. Equal 50 governors. All right, so you get 2x plus 10 equal 50. What's the next step? Subtract 10. So 2x equal 40. So what's x? 20. All right, so that means that the number of Democratic governors is what? 20, and the number of Republican governors is what? 30. So the number of Democratic governors is 20, the number of Republican governors is 30. Now, if you had chose this one, how would you set this up right here?
X plus X minus 10.
Equal 50. So then that would become this now. You'd say 2x minus 10 equal 50. Add 10 to both sides. You get 2x equal 60. So what's x? 30. Now notice here x was 20. Here x was 30. But that's okay because they represented different things. This x represented what? The number of Democratic governors. This x represented the number of Republican governors, which is also 30. And we knew it was 30 from here as well. So here, this would be 30 minus 10, which is what? 20. So it doesn't matter which approach you take, you'll get the same answer. All right, let's do one more, and then we'll be done with this section. Okay, so in this example, it's not listed in the handout, so you're going to have to write this. Okay, so find 4 consecutive odd integers so that the sum of the smallest and 3 times the largest is 302. So find 4 consecutive odd integers so that the sum of the smallest and 3 times the largest is 302. All right, so how many integers are we talking about? 4. So you're going to say first integer, second integer, third integer, and fourth integer. Okay, what would you let x be? First. All right, now remember, we're talking about consecutive odd. What would the second consecutive odd integer have to be represented as? X plus 2. What would the third one have to be represented as? X plus 4, good. And what would the fourth one have to be represented as? X plus 6. Okay, very good. All right, now let's set up the equation. All right, so the equation says this. You're adding two numbers, though. Which two numbers are you adding? The smallest and 3 times the largest. Well, which of these is the smallest? The first one. And then 3 times, and which of these is the largest? The fourth one, the one that says x plus 6. All right, so it's 3 times, in parentheses, x plus 6. All right, so the smallest plus 3 times the largest is going to equal what? 302. So there's your equation. So the smallest plus 3 times the largest has to equal 302. All right, now let's solve. So what am I going to do next? Okay, so x plus 3x plus 18 has to equal 302. Combine like terms, 4x plus 18 has to equal 302. Subtract 18. I get 4x equal, what's that, 284? I'm just writing what y'all telling me now. And then divide both sides by 4. Okay, so what's 284 divided by 4? 71. All right, make sure it makes sense. We were talking about odd integers, right? So make sure that x is an odd integer. And it is odd. All right, so now knowing that x is 71, I can now say this. My first integer is going to be what? 71. My second integer is going to be 73, 75, and 77. And so your sentence, you'd say the 4 consecutive odd integers are 71, 73, 75, and 77. Okay? All right, so that takes care of the problem-solving section. You had 3 worksheets. I think 2 are due today, I think. And then one of them is due, part C is due next class period. Okay, so this is section 9.7 continuation. Let's kind of remind ourselves about something. If we had 3, and this is going to be number 18, and that's on page 700. So let's suppose we had 3 minus 7x is greater than or equal to 10 minus 8x. All right, and you want to solve this inequality. So you're going to find the solutions. Now, if this were an equation, how many solutions would there be? 1. There would be 1 solution. This is an inequality. How many solutions are there? Huh? An infinite number. There'll be an infinite number. Remember the shading in the number line? An infinite number. Okay, so how would you solve this linear inequality? People, you did this on your first test. Yeah, you do it just like you did an equation. So you want to add 7x to both sides? That's fine. Now, remember this, though. You see how she wants to bring the variables to the right-hand side? That's the one way to be careful with. Remember that? Sometimes it's usually better if you do mess up where the variable's on the right. It might be better if you bring the variables to the left. But let's see what happens if you were to bring the variable to the right. So she wanted to add 7x to both sides. Nothing wrong with that. You just got to be very careful. Then when I combine like terms, what's left on the left? 3 is greater than or equal to 10, and then what? Minus x. A negative 8x and a positive 7x is a negative x. then you're going to bring the 10 to the other side. So I'm going to have to do what to both sides? Subtract 10. So what's 3 minus 10? Negative 7 is greater than or equal to, and what's that greater than or equal to? Negative x. Okay, what do you mean? Okay, so you got to get x by itself, all right? So what are you going to divide both sides by? Negative 1, good. So you may want to rewrite this as negative 1 times x. So now divide both sides by negative 1. Now remember, when I divide or multiply an inequality by a negative number, or multiply by a negative number, I've got to do what to this inequality symbol? Reverse it. So what's negative 7 divided by negative 1? Positive 7. So I'm going to have to say 7 is what now? Less than or equal to what? X. All right, so that's what you have to do. Okay, now, if you are asked to graph this, let's say this is 0 and this is 7 right here. And let's go ahead and use open and closed circles here, since that's what your book uses. And you could use parentheses or brackets, does not matter. What would I put on the 7? Closed circle. Why? What part of that indicates it's closed? The equal. So 7 is a solution, right? 7 is a solution. 7 is less than or equal to 7. So put a closed circle. All right, now which way do I shade? To the left? To the right? You had a 50-50 chance, right? You had a 50-50 chance, either going left or right. It's going to the right. You got to be careful when you bring the variable to the right-hand side. This says that all of my solutions have to be bigger than or equal to what? 7. This says that 7 is the smallest. 7 is less than or equal to any other number. So 7 is the smallest. That's what this says. 7 is less than or equal to any of these other numbers. So that means this. That's what that means. So if you need to rewrite this going the other way. So you're going to say x is what? Greater than or equal to 7. Those two mean the same thing. 7 is less than or equal to x means the same thing as x is greater than or equal to 7. And that's what this is. Now, we also talked about set notation. Oh, let's do the interval. Interval notation. What would the interval notation be? What would you write? Bracket. Good, because of the closed circle. If this was an open circle, it would be what? Parentheses. So bracket 7, comma, all the way to what? Infinity with a parentheses. Okay. We talked about set notation. And on my math lab, you have set notation. So you're going to say the set, remember the little open brace, so the set of x's, since my variable is x, you're going to use x, such that, remember that symbol right here means such that, and all you do is write the symbol, the inequality symbol. Does not matter which one you use. I'm going to use this one, such that x is what? Equal to 7. And then close the brace. So that's that notation. The set of x's such that, and then you just write this inequality symbol, such that x is greater than or equal to 7. All right, let's look at 46. All right, 46. All right, 46, you have negative 7x plus 4 is greater than 3 times 4 minus x. All right, so what are you going to do first? Distribute. So I get negative 7x plus 4 is greater than 12 minus 3x. All right, now, since it's an inequality, let's bring the variables to the right-hand side. I'm sorry, to the left-hand side. So what will I do to both sides? Add 3x to both sides. All right, a negative 7x and a positive 3x is a negative 4x plus 4 is greater than 12. What's the next step?
Minus 4 on both sides.
Subtract 4 from both sides. Combine like terms. I get negative 4x is greater than
No.
8, right? Okay, then do what to both sides?
Divide by negative.
All right, now remember when you divide or multiply by negative number, you got to remember to reverse this inequality symbol. So sometimes I'll just circle it to remind me. So x has to be what? Less than a negative 2. So any number less than a negative 2 is a solution. So on the number line, so here's negative 2. Open or close circle. Going which way? To the left. All right, so there's my graph. What would be the interval notation? Remember, you're to graph from left to right. So the arrow is pointing towards what concept? Negative what? Negative infinity. So you can say parentheses, negative infinity, comma, all the way to what? Negative 2 with a parentheses because of the open circle. All right, set notation. You can say the set of x's such that, and then just write this, and you're done. Yeah, and don't forget to close the brace. That was 46. All right, let's look at 54. 54. All right, 54, you have negative 2 times x minus 4 minus 3x is less than, and then you have this, negative, in parentheses, 4x plus 1 plus 2x. All right.
After that 3x, that's a 6.
Here,
Oh, never mind.
that's less
I
than.
see the sign.
Okay. All right, what are you going to do? All right, here, that's going this part C, that's going to be negative 2x plus 8 minus 3x is less than. Now, what do you distribute here? Negative 1. So that becomes, okay, and plus 2x. All right, what's the next step? Okay, what's a negative 2x and a negative 3x? So I got negative 5x plus 8 is less than negative 2x minus 1, right? And negative 4x plus 2x is negative 2x. Let's bring the variables to the left. Since this is an inequality, it's helpful if we bring the variables to the left. So what are you going to add to both sides? 2x. So what's a negative 5x plus 2x? So I got negative 3x plus 8 is less than, okay. What's the next step? All right. Combine like terms. I got negative 3x is less than negative 9. Next step.
Divide by 3x for both sides.
Don't divide by 3x. You divide by what?
3.
Negative 3. Negative 3. So you get x, and I'm dividing by negative number, so x is what? Greater than 3. A negative divided by negative is a positive. All right, so if this is 0 and this is 3, open or closed?
Open.
Going which way?
To the right.
To the right. Don't forget the arrow. Interval. Parentheses.
Comma.
3, comma, infinity with parentheses. Set notation, you'll say the set of x's such that x is greater than 3. All right, 56. So in 56, you have 1/2 times x minus 5 is less than 1/3 times 2x minus 1. All right, what are you going to do? Distribute, okay. So when I distribute the 1/2 here, I get 1/2 x minus what though?
93.
Leave as a fraction. Minus what? 5/2. 1/2 times 5 is 5/2. Less than, what's 1/3 times 2x?
2/3.
2/3. 2/3 x. What's 1/3 times 1? 1/3. All right, so that's what I have. Let's go ahead and use the LCD to clear the fractions. What's the LCD? 6. So I'm going to put those sides in parentheses. All right, so times 6 times 6. So now I have parentheses again. So what are you going to do next? Distribute again. All right, so you're saying 6 times 1/2. What's 6 times 1/2? 3. So what's 6 times 1/2 x though? 3x. Minus, what's 6 times 5/2? 15, because 2 into 2 is 1, 2 into 6 is 3, 3 times 5 is 15. Less than, what's 6 times 2/3? What's that? 3 into 3 is 1, 3 into 6 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4. So what's 6 times 2/3 x though? 4x. Minus, and what's 6 times 1/3? -3. 2, right? 6 times 1/3. 3 into 3 is 1, 3 into 6 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. All right. So you get 3x minus 15 is less than 4x minus 2. All right, let's bring the variables to the left. What are you going to do? Subtract 4x. All right, what's 3x minus 4x? Huh? Negative x, right? Minus 15 is less than, and what's left over here? Okay, what's the next step? All right. So I get a negative x is less than 13. And remember, I'm trying to get x by itself, not negative x. So what do I need to do to both sides? Yeah, because remember, negative x, same thing as say negative 1x. So you're going to divide both sides by negative 1. Since I'm dividing by a negative number, I've got to reverse this. So x has to be what? Greater than negative 13. So all the solutions are going to be bigger than negative 13. So this is 0 and this is negative 13. Open a closed circle. Going which way? To the right. Interval notation. Parentheses, comma, infinity with parentheses. Set notation. The set of x's such that x is greater than negative 13. All right. Okay, now, so 1 more than 5 times a number is less than or equal to 10. So you can find the number. So you can let x equal the number, right?
Yeah.
All right, so you can let x equal the number. So I'm going to remove this.
We gotta zoom out a little bit. Thank you, sir.
All right, so let x equal the number. Now let's read the sentence again. 1 more than 5 times a number. How do you write that?
5 plus 1 equals
Okay, Oh, not equal to, because look, it says this. Less than or equal to. Okay, so you have to use that inequality symbol. Less than or equal to 10. So that's your inequality. So 5x plus 1 is less than or equal to 10. And then all you do is solve. So it's the next step. Okay, so 5x is less than or equal to 9. Then divide both sides by 5. So all such numbers are going to be less than or equal to what? 9 over 5. All right, so there's your answer. 9 over 5. Okay, number 60. That was number 60. Okay, let's look at 61. So 61 says this. All right, the perimeter of a rectangle is to be no greater than 100 centimeters. So you got to remember what perimeter means. What does perimeter mean? Say it again. The distance, perimeter means distance, so the distance are on a figure, right? Yeah. So you have this rectangle, so that means that all four sides add together can be no greater than what? 100. And the width must be 15 centimeters, and they already tell you that. That's 15 centimeters. Okay, and it's asking you what's the maximum length of the rectangle. So here's your length. So you're trying to find x. You're going to let x be the maximum length. So that's why you see x here. You're trying to find the maximum length. You're trying to find the length of the rectangle. So let that be x. So in terms of representing your unknown, you're going to let x equal the length of the rectangle. All right, so sometimes it helps if you draw your diagram, since I am dealing with a rectangle. So you're told that the width is how long? 15. You're trying to find the length of the rectangle. So since you don't know the length, you're going to let that be x. Okay? Now, what do you know about the opposite sides here? Yeah, remember it's a rectangle. A rectangle is a special parallelogram. Remember we talked about parallelograms? So remember, rectangle, opposite sides are what? Congruent. So if this is x, this has to be what? If this is 15, this has to be 15. All right, now how do you set up the equation? Inequality. You're going to add up those four sides, right? So you're going to say x plus 15 plus 15. Be careful. You see, right. So I'm going to be looking to make sure you're using the correct symbols. Okay? So if you put an equal sign, be very upset. Because it says this. It doesn't say it's equal to 100. What does it say? It says it's to be no greater than what? 100. So it means no greater than means less than or equal to. That's what no greater than means. So it has to be less than or equal to 100. So you got to remember, the phrase no greater than means less than or equal to. Means the opposite. So the opposite of no greater than means less than or equal to. So that's what I'm going to be looking for, that right there. So don't put an equal sign thinking it's an equation, because that's not an equation. It's an inequality. All right, so there's your inequality. Now what's the next step? Combine like terms. So I get 2x plus 30 is less than or equal to 100. Now what? Okay. So 2x is less than or equal to 70. And so divide both sides by 2. I get x is less than or equal to 35. All right, now be careful. You're solving a word problem. All right, now what was the question? What was the question? What did they ask you to find? Read it again. What did they ask you to find? Okay, you don't have it in front of you. Let me show you. What did it ask you to find? The maximum length. All right. So if you say in the blank, x is less than or equal to 35, you're gonna lose some points because that's not true. X is not less than or equal to 35. You're not answering the question. Now, what you found was what the length of the rectangle could be for the perimeter to be no greater than 100. So the length could be any number that's less than or equal to what? 35. That's what this says. Any number less than or equal to 35 will make this perimeter less than or equal to what? 100. If x is 5, this perimeter is going to be less than a what? 100. If x is 30, this perimeter will be less than 100. You can check it. 30 plus 30 plus 15 plus 15 is less than 100. But that's not what they're asking. They want to know what's that maximum length that we could have. So that's not what they want. What's the maximum length you can have and still be less than or equal to 100? What'd you say? What's the maximum length you can have and still be less than or equal to 100? Say it again? Okay, you're telling me that a length can be negative?
Oh, no, it gotta be positive.
So what's the maximum length you can have? 35. 35. 35 is the maximum length. The answer is 35. The maximum length is 35. Okay? The maximum length is 35. Any number less than 35 is not gonna be the maximum. It's the phrase. It said, find the what? The maximum length. There's only one maximum length. Okay? Maximum. The maximum. There's only one max. And it's 35. And you can check it. What's 35 plus 35? 70. 15 plus 15 is 30. What's 70 plus 30? 100. So 30 is the maximum. Any number less than 30 will make this perimeter less than 100. All right, so always make sure you're reading the problem carefully as you go through these with the inequalities.
Yeah.
All right, so notice how some of you could have easily made an error here and not thought about what it is that you're trying to find. All right, now, okay, so we're going to go ahead and we still have about 5 minutes, so let me just give you a sheet of paper.